only weeks after that 2006 Tour de France, your best friend, David Witt, commits suicide. How much did that resonate with you at the time amid everything else that was going on?
It didn't affect me like it would have if I was feeling well, if I was okay. In fact, it didn't really affect me at all emotionally. I was so overwhelmed with what was going on that it was just something that I decided, well, this is one more thing I got to deal with. I just deal with the practical parts of what I got to do. I got to help arrange a funeral. I got to go see everybody and go through it. But I couldn't take any more grief. I couldn't take any more pain. It didn't have any effect on me in that way at all. And for years, I never even really stopped to think about it. I just had to keep going. I felt kind of guilty about that, but I couldn't deal with any more pain. I couldn't think about it.
You said that you believe your positive drug test played some role. Why do you feel that way?
Because he was really my biggest fan. He was the guy that encouraged me to always do it. And you can never attribute suicide or mental illness and depression to one thing, but you can rarely attribute a car crash to one thing either. I mean, even if the guy's drunk, you can't say that him swerving into a tree wasn't part of the reason. I mean, drunk people get home safely sometimes. Sometimes people with mental disease get through it, and sometimes they don't, but it's a combination of everything that's going on. So how you could eliminate that from the entire picture is beyond me. It's just the way I believe it to be.
But you don't blame yourself in terms of having anything to do with that, right?
No, I don't blame the decisions I made. I never could have foreseen it ending that way, and I wish he would have just given it some more time to try to accept it, but the circumstances in somebody's life are what lead them to make decisions like that, so how you could remove that is, I don't think you can.
How depressed a person was he?
To me, it didn't seem like he was. To me, he seemed like he had some anxiety in the months before the tour, but he was there when I won the night. We had a party after the race, and he was there the next day, and he flew home with my daughter, and he seemed okay at that point. That was the last time I saw him.
How would you best explain the role that he played in your life?
He was my roommate at the time that I was trying to figure out what to do with my racing career when I switched over to road racing, and he was the guy that encouraged me to do it the most, and I think that had it not been for him, I might not have even continued racing at that point. And he was always there. He was the most generous guy. If I needed something or a favor, he was always there, and I kind of feel like I certainly wasn't there for him after the tour, but I couldn't be. I didn't have any energy left to deal with it, and so I just didn't call him. I figured he was okay. He didn't say anything to me. So I never spoke to him again after the test got announced, but he was my best friend. I mean, it was a big loss for me.
How much credit do you give him for encouraging you to stay with cycling? And you just alluded to this briefly, when you were really giving it some serious consideration in terms of quitting at one point?
At that time, he deserves all the credit. I mean, he was the one guy that said, just keep going, and I couldn't afford to pay rent. He said, you can live here and just keep training. You'll find a team. And so I think that I regret the fact that, I guess I shouldn't say regret it, I'm sorry about the fact that he didn't get to feel the satisfaction of actually having me win the race. I think he must have been not feeling well even at that time. It didn't come across to me, but I always envisioned him being as happy as I was when I finally won, and I guess it wasn't that way. You
said before, if you had stopped to think about what had happened to him after it happened, you would have just given up. Why do you say that?
Because I was at the limit of what I could deal with. I can handle a lot of stress. You have to be able to deal with a lot of stress to be able to win the tour. It's 3 weeks long, and there's a lot going on. But this was more stress than I could handle, and add that on top of it. I mean, it's hard enough to deal with your best friend committing suicide with nothing else going on in your life. I've seen people go through it. It's not a simple thing to accept and deal with. And this was on top of having lost my entire career and my reputation and being in a hopeless situation that I couldn't change. I just couldn't add that to it.
When you finally had a chance to sit back and think about what happened with him, was there some sense of appreciation to be able to, look at all the good times you shared together, whereas, when it was actually going on, you were so caught up in everything else?
I haven't, to this day, really sat down and tried to appreciate those 6 or 7 or 8 years when I raced on the road. I can't. I'm not ready to think about it. Because all it reminds me of is what happened afterwards at the moment. Maybe someday I can, but I can't. I just can't do it. I want to do something else.
You end up going to, the last question I have on this, the hospital with severe chest pains at some point. What did you think was going on?
So many things happened within a month that, I won the Tour, and then I had this positive doping test announced, and then David committed suicide, and then I had my hip replaced. There was no time to even stop and think, and so I guess when my chest started hurting, I figured maybe that was just how it was supposed to end. I don't know. It wasn't funny. I didn't know what it was. Never really had medical issues where I have to go to the hospital and try to figure them out.